Welcome, marketing leaders and curious humans. I'm Drew Neisser, founder and penguin of chief of CMO Huddles, and your host for another Drew on Drew episode. This is where I get to both ask the questions and answer them. We do this about every 10 episodes or so, whether you need it or not. This episode, fresh off of our really successful Super Huddle just about a week and a half ago in early November, is a top 10 countdown of flocking awesome insights from the Super Huddle. Okay, that's a little redundant, but they're designed to help you swim or perhaps fly farther in 2026. So let's get right into it. So Drew, before we get too deep into this, did you really wear a full penguin suit to greet over 100 CMOs in Palo Alto? And if so, what the heck? Guilty as charged. Yep, I wore a full, whoa, that's really looking bad. Okay, wait. Okay, I did wear this hat at the welcome reception. People were very comfortable with that. By the way, we did have 4 incredible breakdancers wearing penguin suits. You can see the video on LinkedIn. So, starting and kicking off the Super Huddle at about 9:15 a.m. on November 7th, I walked out in a full body penguin suit, complete with a purple tie, which I'm very proud of because that linked the penguin video that we did to promote the Super Huddle all the way to the beginning moment. And in terms of why, well, yeah, you know what? So it wasn't a dare. No. One attendee pointed out, penguins are more than a mascot. It's a philosophy around the power of huddling. And there was nothing like wearing a penguin suit to sort of get the attention of the community and draw attention to this particular notion of huddling and why we huddle. Because it turns out the differential temperature between inside and outside a huddle is not 10 degrees, it's not 50 degrees, it's 70 degrees warmer. This is not metaphoric, it's literally. Scientists call this social thermal regulation. And by the way, you think I should change the name from CMO Huddles to CMO Social Thermal Regulators? I don't think so. Right. And it turns out that some huddles at the very center get up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's important also to acknowledge that this isn't just about survival. This is about thriving in extreme environments, which is exactly what CMOs are doing right now. So wearing this penguin suit, as silly as it was, really did set the tone. As Curtis Sparr, founder of Boss Bar PR agency, said, when the guy running the event shows up in a full penguin suit, you know it's not your average CMO conference. So I had a lot of fun wearing that and, got to tell a few penguin/CMO jokes. So, all right, you got that answer? You happy with that? Good, we can move on. So yeah, penguin suit it is. So, all right, let's get with takeaway number 1. Not necessarily the number 1 takeaway, but takeaway number 1. Well, this really came up even before the Super Huddle. We had a strategy lab on Thursday, November 6th. And in the strategy lab, there were 4 different breakouts. One on positioning led by Bob Wright of Firebrick. Another one on generative AI led alternately by Lisa Adams and Samantha Stark. One led by Kathy Johnson on business plans. The 4th one was Jamie Geyer leading org design and how all of that could change in 2026. So I happened to sit in on the positioning one, and it was so heartening to hear this because really, I think the takeaway number 1, and this extended into the Super Huddle the next day, positioning is a business decision. It's not a marketing decision. The takeaway that I have for you is forget the messaging workshop. Positioning is the business decision about where you'll win and why. So I'm going to quote Bob Wright for a second. You know you have the right positioning when your CEO shows up, your CRO uses it to close deals, and your customers would actually miss your product if it disappeared. So both in the workshop as well in the session that Melinda Wilkin did with Kevin Ruane from Precisely, CMOs were reminded that you need to start with a customer's problem, a big problem, not your product. You need to bring in some outside experts to really stretch your leadership team's comfort zone. And you don't sign off on a project like this until your CEO signs on. So Kevin Ruane, I mentioned from Precisely, showed how realigned positioning gave his team a way to escape category sameness. This was really a masterclass on unsnoozing your strategy. Okay, very good. Thank you for that one. What was takeaway number 2? So the second one was really rewire growth for 2026. And I know that's a little vague, so let me try to get more specific. The strategy within the strategy labs, Kathy Johnson led discussions on business planning. And she notes in her great post on LinkedIn, the CMOs dropped their filters and dug into what's really broken in go-to-market. She asked, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in 2026 planning? And what was really amazing is the CMOs, they mapped it, they solved it, and they did it together. And so these are a couple of the things that Kathy surfaced. One, sort of this PLG product-led growth to sales-led growth pivots, tighter executive alignment, not just at the handshake level, but at the system level. And then budget shifting from programs that are sort of broad to precisionally targeted things. And then she cites some crowd favorites, some frameworks. Quote, feed the business, build the business, create the future, unquote. Planning with time horizons. She also talked about one-page go-to-market plans co-signed by marketing and sales. I am a huge fan of plan on the pages. And 3, creating stop lists. These are things that you're not going to do. The definition of the strategy is knowing what you say no to. So saying no is your highest growth move. Okay, that was takeaway number 2. All right, number 3. What is number 3? Number 3 is all about culture and how culture is your AI advantage. And this was probably the first time where I really linked, in my mind, culture and AI. And culture was a dominant theme throughout the day and completely somewhat unexpected to me. And I'm going to connect some dots for you. So we started with Udi Ledergor from Gong, who wrote the book Courageous Marketing. Later in the day, we had Chris Degnan, the CRO, and Denise Pearson, the CMO of Snowflake, on their book Make It Snow. And then towards the end of the day, we had Carol Dietrich sharing her experience working with Lovable and how this company enjoyed incredible growth. And what was so interesting about all 3 of those, from Gong to Snowflake to Lovable, is the uniqueness of the culture and how that culture sort of fueled AI adoption. And I think one thing that you can think about here is you may not be able to out AI everybody, but you probably can out culture them. So Bindu Shalapan, who was from FleetCor, one of the attendees, wrote, the courage to be wrong is what leads to the most original ideas. And this was reinforced, and I think she was building off of Udi's inspiration, who said, best practices, ? Boring practices, period. In order to have a culture of experimentation and use AI in ways that will get you to competitive advantage, you need this psychological safety. Udi talked about it. You need to understand that it's a strategy. If people feel like they can experiment and they can fail, as Tani Perry reminded us, you've got to praise the process, not just the outcomes. Because if you're only celebrating successes, you are not going to build a culture of experimentation. So AI is going to require experimentation. You need a culture of experimentation. To get there, you need psychological safety. This is how you get to build a brave team, not just a busy one. Great. That was number 3. Nice. Okay, number 4. What the heck was number 4? Like a lot of these takeaways, they seem obvious, but there's some subtleties involved. And when I talked to Udi in our fireside chat at the beginning, one of the things I said, so what do you think about your hiring process and why you were able to do so much creative work? And he said, you know what? I hired for energy, not skills. Because he knew he could teach people stuff, but you just can't give people an injection of energy. And so I love that. And we explored that, and the outcomes as a result. He hired people who were good at something over here, but showed tremendous initiative and a willingness to experiment. So that led them to do some crazy, crazy things. Among the crowd favorite was how Gong was able to buy its first Super Bowl ad And we all know that, Super Bowl ads are $5 million, $6 million, $7 million. And Gong was certainly didn't have that kind of budget. So they figured out that if they bought 5 to 10% of like 3 markets, they would reach 80% of their customers and prospects. So it was a local buy at just pennies on the dollar relative to a national buy. And this was a great story that shared how CMOs can punch up above their weight. It was smart, it was scrappy, and of course they did a great job with the commercial too. But this does link back to, because it was an energetic person who sort of figured this out, that we can do it. I'm going to add a couple other things that Udi said that I think are worth referencing here, even though they're not about hiring for energy. One is the importance of ignoring the competition. He mentioned this several times, and going your own way. I think that goes back to a culture of experimentation. But the more you do your own thing and worry less about the competition, the more likely you are to be a differentiated brand and build the business. And as part of that, now this is where the innovation part comes in, is he insists on dedicating at least 5% of his budget to bold experiments. All right, so we're only on takeaway number 5. So what is that one? This was sort of a good news, bad news. This is CMOs need to drive the AI bus. And look, they were the first ones to get MarTech. They were the first ones to get the company to go digital. It was interesting whether we're talking about from content to campaign creation to customer insights. CMOs are leading AI implementation at a lot of companies. Sandy Ono of OpenText talked about the things that they were doing. Chandler Padamaran was really helpful in reframing AI, not as automation, but more as orchestration. And this was, I think, a relief to a lot of people, because there was a lot of concern that folks are going to have to do just more with less, because AI is going to mean you need less people. And he looked at it as, it's not about doing more with less. It's about doing more with same. And told the example, yeah, we want to grow 30% next year, but I want to see if we can do it with the same team that we have, because we are able to do so much more. We're so empowered as a result of the way we are using AI, not just for automation, but for orchestration. So here were some of the things that the CMOs in the community are doing and mention. They're building digital twins of their best buyers so they can query them and research them and use them for sales enablement. They're using AI to surface new champion contacts. We had the founder of Boomerang, which is sort of like LinkedIn Navigator on steroids, and they worked with Sift, and Armin Najarian was there talking about how they worked with Sift. It was just a couple months and went through all of the reps' emails, and they found 3,000 new customers, champions that had sort of gone off and that represented a pretty big pipeline of opportunity. Another thing is deploying structured chaos so teams can test AI safely, but boldly. So this is sort of the sandbox approach. Another CMO, Janet Jaiswal from Blue Shift, talked about how she was using webless.ai to deliver answers from their website to their visitors. And if you go to CMOHuddles.com, you'll see a red box at the bottom, which has read everything and digested everything on both the CMO Huddles website as well as the Renegade marketing website, and it will give you answers. What Janet did was took a couple steps further. One, they replaced their Drift instance with webless.ai, and the little Google search thing that you have at the very top of your page, they replaced that as well with webless, because the answers are now based on the content that you have on your website. So I love that story. And then Grant Johnson sort of summarized it in his post. He talked about how AI transformation is happening now. CMOs have the pulpit and expertise to bring pragmatic AI implementation at scale to their organization and help drive enterprise transformation. So thanks for that, Grant. Also on our advisory board. Okay, so we're moving along. Drew, what is takeaway number 6? This one might feel a little tactical, but it's ignore AEO. Some people call it GEO, as in answer engine optimization, at your own risk. I started my interview with Guy Yalif from Webflow with a quote from Kelly Hopping, who said, I think GEO is a load of crap. And her point was that if you're doing SEO really well, you don't really need to worry about AEO. And, Guy sort of said, yeah, she's right, but there's a few nuances that you really need to be thinking about because AEO, and I'm quoting Guy here, AEO is an evolution of SEO, and your websites now need to engage humans and efficiently communicate structure and meaning to machines. So efficiently communicating structure and meaning to machines means going through all the content on your website using something called schema. It's making sure all, your H1, your H2 tags, and this is way above my pay grade when it comes technically, but there are technical things that you can do with schema and structured content. And from a content standpoint, you need clean, authoritative answers to the questions that your customers have. So AEO isn't just about traffic. It's about relevance in a world where Google is no longer the gatekeeper. So I don't know if you need to spend a lot of time on Reddit, which is one of the influencers of some of the LLMs, but I do know that you need to be thinking about this. And if you ignore it, you're going to regret it because the pot of gold at the end of this rainbow is the traffic generated by LLMs converts at least 4 times higher than your Google traffic. And you're probably already, hopefully, being discovered on LLMs as we speak. Okay, we're moving along. So Drew, takeaway number 7. What is it? This one is a result of my conversation with Chris and Denise from Snowflake. The CMO-CRO alignment being the key word, is a go-to-market superpower. I have to tell you, this was one of those mic drop moments when I acknowledged that the two of them, Denise Pearson and Chris Deegan, had worked together for 9 years. And I asked the 100 plus marketing leaders in the audience, how many of you have worked with your CRO for 9 years? And there wasn't another hand raised. And then I asked, okay, how many of you have survived through 2 CEOs? A few hands. And I said, well, keep your hands up if you've survived 3 CEOs. And there were a couple hands left. And then I said, okay, 4 CEOs. And the hands were down. So Chris and Denise worked together for 9 years through 4 CEOs. Clearly, this was like a bulk work that the two of them were so in sync that both of their jobs were in some ways secure. But more importantly, they got it done. They were making it happen for Snowflake, and which enjoyed incredible growth. Denise talked about her initial interview and describing herself as some people think of her as an ice queen because she's this Swedish person, and they had a lot of common beliefs. Denise described marketing as a service for sales. Chris talked about how we didn't talk about MQLs. We shared urgency, trust, and aligned accountability. So what was their model? Weekly syncs, fast decisions, no defensiveness, just doing the work. It was kind of a kumbaya moment, actually, I gotta say, but it was also coordination at scale, and it's built one of the most admired go-to-market machines in B2B. All right, I want to see that whole interview again on tape. Well, you will. So what is takeaway number 8? All right, you asked. So build brand speed and delight into your DNA. So towards the end of the day, we were still pretty highly energized at the Super Huddle. And I had a chance to talk to Carol Dietrich about the phenomenal success of Lovable. They went from 0 to 100 million in revenue in 8 months. I think their current evaluation is somewhere around 1.8 billion. Carol was kind of funny because she didn't want to say, well, they did these things and they grew phenomenally. It was a collection of a lot of things. In my mind, one was this culture of speed and how speed beats everything. So they would drop products really like weekly. They worked with influencers on an intense level. Social media, they turned it on its ear. They would push out, sometimes they would have rage baiting type content, and they would do swarms, bee swarming they called it, where somebody in the company would drop a post and then everybody else would like it, and they could sort of somehow or other make them viral. What was the collective takeaway was a lot of US companies wouldn't take it this far. They didn't care. They weren't worried about, they took a lot of chances early on, and it paid off. But at the core, they had a product that delighted people really quickly. So you could think of this as product-led growth. And in some ways it was B2C to B, in that they built up a large user group, end user group, who could use this tool to create amazing things. And the tool itself, the output, became the marketing. And so customers became the marketing. I guess the one other thing that really struck me also was the visibility of the CEO wasn't an accident. There was a guy behind the curtain who was helping the CEO engage and really push things very, very far. I think one lesson you could definitely take away is in B2B, beige is a choice. Don't be beige. Okay. All right. We're getting through this, Drew. Takeaway number 9. What is it? Strategy first, random acts never. Kathy Johnson really nailed this in her write-up. She said, before we finalize anything, we are revalidating why we win and simplifying it. There's a lot of just magic here in the focus and the simplicity of what marketers want to do next year. So having a really strong, clear positioning, a differentiated positioning, and making sure that everybody understands it. And the random acts part, CMOs really talked about killing MQLs, not presenting them, not showing them. They are not a thing. If you have to get this far, talk about sales qualified opportunities, however you define those, and do make sure you define it. And as part of this simplification, we had CMOs really talking about trying to align behind one KPI. Denise and Chris talked about, and this was definitely sales qualified opportunities. And what the CMOs were doing is prioritizing clarity over complexity. And we had Josh Leatherman, who wrote Scalable Acts of Marketing, and it's a great book. Oh yeah, I wrote the foreword to it. I highly recommend that you get it. And he talked about and reminded the CMOs in the audience, you're not just a marketer. You're an officer of the company, which means you've got to operate like one. All righty, we're getting down to the wire here, Drew. Takeaway number 10. What is that? Well, this one is really, it may not be a surprise to any of you, but boy, was it gratifying. And it's the physical events cement community. They really aren't about leads, they're about belonging. And so this quote comes from Joe Andrew, who is the CMO of Support Logic, who says, quote, CMOs huddle together to share warmth, protect each other from the storm, and rotate to keep the group stronger. Was he talking about penguins or CMOs? I may have gotten them confused, but they're inseparable. And what happened at the Super Huddle, from the strategy lab to our welcome reception to the VIP dinner and then our all-day Super Huddle, was you could just see the connections that CMOs were making. By the way, one of the things that we do at the Super Huddle is we have table huddles where we actually have the table work together. The first one was on how they're using Gen AI more effectively. And the second one is, what are they going to do differently in 2026? And it was just amazing to watch them interact and help each other. And as I said, there isn't a single challenge. We actually asked everybody to create challenge cards and talk about their big M challenge and their little M challenge. And I've got them right here. And we went through them. We're organizing all of those right now. And what's fascinating is there isn't a single challenge in this stack that was represented from the room that another person in that hasn't already solved. So the power of the community to help each other was, I think, profound and clear, and really, for me, really heartwarming. So I have to say that it was a flocking awesome. It's funny, we promised flocking awesomer and from 2024's conference, and I think we delivered it. So we're going to just call that marketing manifestation, as in you present this promise and then you deliver on it. So I'm really proud of that. I think you got a sense a little bit here of what's happened. We will have videos that will come out later from various sessions. So when we bring you together, it's pretty flocking awesome, and that's how we do it. Oh, You're about to say something. What is it? What's the last thing? What's the kicker here? Oh, yes. At the Super Huddle, we actually introduced our new RepuTracker tool, which is designed to help the members of the leader program connect their brand investments, their reputational investments to business outcomes. And we're providing them a score every single month based on 5 separate measures, based on 15 to 20 different publicly available sources. And we're excited that that's going to be out to our members. And actually, we also did it for the attendees. They'll get at least a couple months free of that. So exciting. We can help them solve one of the biggest challenges that they have, which is how do we talk about reputation if we're not measuring it? Well, that was awesome, Drew. Thank you for all of that feedback. I think people are going to walk away with ideas, with inspiration, or maybe just a weird desire to buy a penguin costume. I don't know. Whatever it is, if you enjoyed this, please share this episode. And until next time, keep on huddling, experimenting, and keep being flocking awesome CMO. That's it. Peace out. For more interviews with innovative marketers, visit renegademarketing.com/podcast and hit the subscribe button. Renegade Marketers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neisser. Hey, that's me. This show is produced by Melissa Caffrey, Laura Parkin, and Ishar Cuevas. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins, and the intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, and learn more about CMO Huddles or my CMO coaching service, please visit renegademarketing.com. I'm your host, Drew Neisser. Until next time, keep those renegade marketing caps on and strong.